My name is Polina Osho. I'm an artist and I'm very happy to invite you to our series of live interviews with creatives and artists all over the world. And today we have a very special guest, an incredible artist, Julia Hagen. She's a Chicago-based artist and she creates very vibrant night cityscapes, and she has a special series of you will never believe but it's a series of hot dog stands, big canvases, small canvases, all about these hot dog stands. And I am sure it will be super interesting to know how Julia shifted from pre-med student to full-time artist. And we will talk together today about how to turn your passion to a real serious job when you love art and you love to create, but then you just decide, okay, now I'm an artist and I create and sell my artwork, how to balance all this business, art, and social media stuff. And Julie, if you can hear me, oh, I see a request. Subscribe to the newsletter if you don't want to miss any highlights of this interview. And also, you're really very welcome to write any questions in the comments. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Good afternoon to you. And good morning to whoever is watching from Chicago.
Thank you so much for joining, especially at this early time.
Oh, no
Usually.
worries. I'm an early morning girl, so this is
Oh,
perfect.
that's wonderful. Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
really happy to see you because I am charmed by your artworks. When I opened your Instagram and your website, there are so many canvases which you painted with all these city nightscapes, and I think it's really something so special that you have your own artistic style, very distinctive one. And I'm sure it will be very interesting to know for everyone how you develop it, how you explore it, how you now work as an artist, and also many other things. But we will start from the beginning because I read on your website that you were a pre-med student.
Yes.
Can you share with us a little bit how you made that shift from medicine student to artist?
Or yeah, it was an interesting journey. I think I always knew in my heart that I wanted to be an artist from the time I was a little girl. Anyone would ask, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I would say an artist. But when you go to school, and I didn't have any examples of artists in my life that were doing this as a career. I had people who had it as like a passion. So I just kind of put it on the back burner as something that maybe when I retired I'd become an artist. But I really was like focused in school, and I was good in like math and science and stuff. So, but it was not my passion. I didn't love it, and I also it's kind of funny now that I look back at that I wanted to be in pre med because I'm actually like really scared of blood and like all that stuff. So it just is funny, but I went pre-med, and then as soon as I got there, I was working so hard in the library, spending hours and hours studying. This thought occurred to me, wow, if I just worked this hard at, trying to be a full-time artist, I'd probably make it work because I'm working so hard to try to get an A on this exam. And so that thought kept occurring to me. And it was about like 6 months later that I decided I wanted to transfer to the School of the Art Institute. So, yeah.
Did you have any support from family and friends? Because this is so different, artist and doctor.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think it's funny. I think my parents at first were a little shocked, but then as soon as it like settled in, they also, knew since the time I was young that I always loved art. And I think they were more surprised that I wanted to be a doctor because they know that I'm scared of blood and like all that other stuff. So they were like, okay, this makes sense. And they were really supportive. So I was really, really pleasantly surprised for how supportive my family was. But I definitely got some weird looks from friends and just acquaintances in my life, like not quite understanding why I would quote unquote like throw away an opportunity to be pre-med and have a very stable career to go and be an artist. So I think that was mostly it. People were confused why I was choosing an uncertain path when I had this like option laid out before me that was like such a regimented and certain path.
Hmm. And what did help you to feel more confident in this new path?
Yeah, it's interesting you asked that because I don't know if I really felt confident like during the journey of like deciding to go to art school. I just kind of kept telling myself like failure is not an option, like we're gonna do this, like I've made the choice. And there was a part of me that thought, well, maybe I'll stay at the school I'm at and go pre-med and then still have like art as a second major or something. But I knew that if I did that, then I'd probably chicken out and I'd get too scared. So I really decided to like make the full switch to like a fully art school so that I kind of didn't have an alternative. It was like, okay, I have to do this. I'm at art school. So I knew myself and that if given the choice, I might get scared. So I just dove right in and I did it scared. I was scared the whole time. I didn't even know 100% when I was at art school. It took me a while to accept the fact that I actually wanted to be a painter because that really felt scary to admit because once again I didn't know many people who were artists for a living, and there's definitely the whole story of like the starving artist. And I took many different classes in film in art school. I took graphic design classes, I took sound classes. So I really kind of danced around it for a while before I was able to accept, like, okay, I actually just want to paint. And it wasn't until my senior year in art school where I actually kind of decided to focus in painting, which is sort of funny. So I graduated with a general arts degree, not even a like concentration in painting. And then it was after art school that I was living at home and I was, working in my parents' basement and I only really had access to painting materials. And, people in my life were really encouraging about my artwork and painting. And so I decided to just go for it. So, yeah, that's the whole story.
That's that's wonderful. It sounds like you made this decision, just made a choice and then went for it. And
Yeah.
do you remember that moment? Maybe it's not a moment, maybe it's some period of time when you felt like, okay, now I'm a painter, a real painter, and I really can do this. It's working out. It's now not only the dream, but it is what is going on with me.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like it was after art school that I had that realization of I'm a painter. This is kind of always what I've wanted to do. And it was interesting because I didn't focus in painting as much in art school. I I kind of had to go about discovering my style totally like on my own again. And while of course, taken classes in art school, I wasn't sure what subject matter or style best suited me. And so I had to do a lot of that exploring on my own. And I think there were a couple paintings that I did early on. I actually started out doing mostly floral paintings. So and kind of abstract too. So I've been following your work for a long time. And
Thank you.
I remember seeing actually you on social media and other artists like you who were doing art full time that I felt really inspired. And I was like, wow, okay, there are people who are doing this. And so I feel like actually social media was really helpful for me to see other artists doing it because I didn't have those examples in
Mhm.
my immediate life. Yeah, so that was actually really inspiring.
Thank you for your kind words. And you know, for me, it works too. And I remember when I started to share on Instagram, it helped a lot that I saw other artists who also share some artworks because I didn't have any examples in real life too. So I also have this connection in old kind of stuff. These artists just self-starving
Yeah.
these things,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
and that doesn't help at all to start an art career.
No, there's a lot stacked against artists when you start out, and stories that other people have given you about how, it's really, really hard and it's going to take years and years and years and years before you ever make money. Maybe you won't even make money until after you're dead, like then your paintings will sell. So I had all those stories, and I just kind of had to tell myself that they weren't true,
Hmm.
and that I had people, thankfully, family and friends who were willing to buy my art when I was first starting out and experimenting. And I remember when I had my first sale that wasn't a family member. I started doing these art festivals in Chicago, and this one woman came into my tent, and she was so excited about this one painting of mine. And I thought, okay, well, maybe she'll buy it. At this point, I think it had been a day at this festival, and no one had bought my art. And she bought it, and I was so excited. I was like, wow, she's not a family member. I didn't have to, like guilt trip her into buying my art. And it was like from that moment on that I really was like, okay, like other people like my art. I just have to get it out there and have people see it.
And did you start to maybe participate in the markets or build your own website? Where did you expose at that time your artworks?
Yeah.
Galleries or something?
Yeah, so it was pretty much, I started out with art festivals, and I built a website. At the time, my website was mostly just a portfolio website. I wasn't really selling my work through my website. And I was going to these art festivals, and at this time too, this was in 2019, 2018, 2019, and then 2020 happened and there were no festivals. And so I had to really then decide to fully focus on social media, and really built up my website and was selling my art online then, because I at that point too was not a full-time artist. I had other like side jobs, like I was babysitting, and then at one point I did take like an office job that was miserable and I hated it. But I just needed it to make ends meet. But I was still always like, new art was what I wanted to do full time. So anytime after work, I was like fully putting my attention into getting into those festivals. And then when 2020 happened, I decided to actually just, the world was so unpredictable. I think there's a common theme for me, is that I'll just make these kind of dramatic choices to just go off the deep end and decide. And in 2020, I decided to quit that desk job that did not like, and fully commit to promoting myself on social media and see if I could make it work. So
Uh, yeah, I saw that you have reels on millions of views actually, and
yeah.
there's a lot of artworks if we scroll your feed
Mhm.
down, and there were some big canvases with landscapes. Um, how would you say what was that moment when you discovered your artistic style, and what helped you to develop it? How much time did it take?
Yeah.
Do you remember that period?
I do, yeah. So, like I said, I started out after art school kind of having to find my own style, and it was a journey. And I think in a lot of ways, still, I believe you're always evolving and finding your
Yeah,
style
of
throughout
course.
your whole life. But I started out doing a lot of florals and flowers, and just was really interested in color. And I've always been inspired by the things around me. And at the time when I started out, I was living at home, and my mom is actually a really avid gardener. And so I was painting the flowers that she was
Ah,
growing.
that's
And
really
then, yeah, and then I moved out and I moved to the city. And of course, there were not as many gardens around here, but I was really inspired just by like sunsets and the city, how the city looked at that hour and specifically. And of course, you could take a picture of that, but I felt like even when I was taking photos of that, it didn't quite capture the magic of how the city looked like at sunset or at night. And I just got really obsessed with the idea of trying to capture that. And that was really what pushed me. I think the work I had done painting flowers and working with bright colors taught me a lot about lighting and the importance of emphasis. And something I've learned is that you kind of contrast is so important in creating an interesting like color dynamic, because otherwise if everything is colorful sometimes, um, and you aren't like careful in how you choose your colors, it could just feel like, like rainbows are beautiful, but it might not create the same emphasis that you want in lighting. And so I started really experimenting with like when to use color, when to, make sure that there's like, just enough of a contrast so something really pops. And I really think about cities less about the place and more about the lighting and the memory of a place than trying to be perfectly accurate to the location. So that was an evolution, I think, from florals to working in cityscapes. And I started doing these really large cityscapes and was looking at the city from kind of above. And the video that I think you might be mentioning is this one I did that went really viral. I think Reels had just come out on Instagram. And I think that maybe played a little bit into the timing of it too, where it just so happened that I started doing these videos where I was turning around the canvas. And obviously a lot of artists do that now, but there weren't that many people doing that, I think, at the time. And I had this one painting I did that was Chicago at night, and the highway is like lit up and it looks really striking. And so then when I'm turning it around, I think people just found that really like jarring and cool to look at. And that video got like 10 million views, and it was what I think really sent my career into a whole new direction. And I gained a following after posting that one video, which was wild. And then afterwards, more and more of my videos started to get attention. And then it kind of died down a little bit. It became, I think, there was this period of time of like explosive growth, and then of my social media. And then it was like, okay, that was cool. All right, that was such a whirlwind. I don't know if you had a similar experience of gaining a large following, like kind of all at one time, but it was definitely scary to go from having, 1,000 followers to having 100,000 followers in the course of a month for me. And yeah, that was like my journey. It was like very rapid gaining a following, and I started to get in my head a lot about what I was posting. So I had to do kind of go back into myself and think about like, okay, like what am I really trying to capture? And I think Chicago is so important to me. It's where I've grown up, and I knew I was painting these really pretty cityscapes, but I wanted to like say more with my paintings. So
Yeah, this is how the hot dog stands
yeah.
come in. And I'm super curious why hot dog stands. Tell me the story, please.
Yeah, okay. So if you've never been to Chicago, it sounds so weird, but Chicago actually has more hot dog stands than they do fast food restaurants combined. So, like for example, there are more like independently owned hot dog stands than there are like McDonald's, Wendy's, like bigger franchises here. We really, I think, have an interesting food culture of these smaller family owned fast food restaurants, and they're all over. There are over 2,000 in Chicago alone before you even gone outside of the city. And so I've got really, you don't really notice them at first when you've lived here your whole life. You're kind of just like, oh, you're used
Yeah.
to it. Like that's the case. And then I would go to other cities and I would notice like, oh, there's really not like you can't find like a local hot dog stand here,
Mhm.
or there would be like one. And I started just noticing like how many we have in Chicago. And a lot of them during the pandemic like stayed open. And that was another thing that was interesting too, was a lot of other restaurants closed, but the hot dog stands stayed open. And so I was going to them a lot during the pandemic, and I just got really interested in their aesthetic. They look similar, right? There's a common theme of certain colors and bright neon lights, but each one is different based on these interesting buildings we have in Chicago, and the architecture here. And I just found them so charming and very specific to each neighborhood. And the people that go to these stands too have been maybe going there like their whole life. And it's very common that you sort of pick one stand and that's your hot dog stand that you go to. And that's like, you're very loyal to that stand and you get to know the family and the owners of the hot dog stand. And so I just got really interested in that and I decided like, well, I think I should try to visit all of them and paint as many as I can because I think we need to celebrate this like unique food culture in Chicago. And it also happens to really align with this colorful aesthetic and this nighttime like glowy thing that I really like to capture in my work.
Do you have any pressure memories, like what was maybe some day or just any memory from your childhood, which is connected with the hot dogs stand? No? Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, it's not like quite a hot dog stand, but actually an ice cream place that also served hot dogs. There was Dairy Queen in America. They're independently owned, so each place it's a bigger franchise, but each Dairy Queen is owned independently. And there's one that was like right by my high school and I would go there after cross country with my friends, or my dad would take me there. And then also there was another hot dog stand by my high school that we would go to called Irving's. And so it was just like always a part of like after a sporting event, after class, sometimes with your friends, you'd go to Irving's or you'd go to Dairy Queen and it became sort of this like ritual with your friends that you go to. And then similar, there was another place in my town called U Dog U that like opened up when I was a child, and my brother loved going there, so we would go there. So it was just like kind of always like in the fabric of my childhood and in my adolescence, like they were always there. And I started to realize, like, oh, I guess not everyone has had this experience or has these sorts of, maybe you have a place, but it's not like a hot dog place. It's just such a Chicago thing. And when you're from here, it's sort of just like, it's just so ubiquitous that you kind of forget that, like, oh, this is very unique to this place.
How do you think? What was the most important steps or any tips that you can share with other artists who are searching for their artistic style based on your experience? What are the main things you should do if you're searching for your art style?
Yeah, I that's a really interesting question. It was something I definitely stressed out about a lot when I was first starting out.
Yeah.
And I think if anything, it's kind of important to just let go a little bit. And if you find it's great to look at other artists that you feel inspired by. I remember I was confused because there were so many amazing artists out there that I was like, I love their work and I love this, but they're so different. How do I, make work like them? I don't know. But I just started to think more closely, like, okay, well, what is it
Mhm.
about these artists that I love that I want to capture? And I think kind of just, keeping those in the back of your mind, but then when you go and start creating, just follow like your joy and think about like what is inspiring you. And you don't have, it doesn't always have to be exactly like for example, I never thought that I would paint hot dog stands. Like that was never something that I thought would be a part of my creative journey. But I just sort of like surrendered into it and allowed myself to explore and not judge what came up. And like I said, I started out painting flowers and now I'm painting hot dogs. So it will, and that took, you know, years. I think that was, I think this, it was like a, it's been a 8-year journey starting with hot dogs, or sorry, excuse me, starting with flowers. Now I'm painting hot dogs. Over the course of 8 years, my style has evolved. And so I think the pressure you put on yourself to find your style um, can be sort of counterproductive because I think it needs to happen organically with time. And the best thing you can do is just keep creating. And the more you create, the more information you have about what you enjoy painting, what you enjoy drawing, and slowly but surely that will you'll get closer and closer to really figuring out like okay, this is exactly what I want to be doing, and this is the essence of what I'm trying to share with the world.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if you talk about art materials that you use, art
Mhm.
tools,
Yeah.
do you use acrylics? And also, I have a question about canvas.
Mhm.
I noticed that you use the wooden canvases, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the difference for you between the material of the canvas and why you prefer this or that? Can you share a bit about that?
Totally. Yeah. So it's interesting. I started out with oil paint when I was in art school, and I definitely think there within the painting community there is still a bit of a stereotype that like oil paint is the superior medium.
Mhm.
But I found that that was oil was hard for me to work with because I'm a little impatient and I like when things like dry quickly and then I can paint over them and I can work faster. And I decided, therefore, acrylic makes the most sense for me because of the drying time. And also, there's a lot of range in terms of the mediums you can use with acrylic paint and different types of finishes and different types of body. And I just really liked acrylic paint more in terms of how it best suited the way I paint. And then I also started noticing as I was painting more and more detailed work and fine lines with buildings that I didn't like the texture of the canvas as much, and I wanted a very smooth surface. So that's when I started experimenting with wood panels because I felt like the surface was smooth enough that I could, you know, do a line and it didn't feel like it was getting interrupted by the texture of the canvas.
Do you have any tips on working with wooden canvas, acrylics,
Mhm.
maybe some how the finishing layers or how better to ground it?
Totally. Yeah, it's taken a while to figure out in terms of how to get that really smooth texture on a wooden panel. I actually now use like the a foam roller that you would use to like
Mhm.
paint your house with, you know, one of those to prime my canvases because I noticed that the brush strokes I was using with a gesso brush, like I couldn't quite sand those out and they would come through on such a smooth surface. So yeah, I use like a house painting roller to prime my canvases, and then I actually use an electric sander to sand down the layers after I do many layers of gesso to get like a really smooth surface. I also really like gesso board because it's you know it's a little more expensive, but it's nice if I want to save some time and not have to do that labor intensive process of like so many layers of gesso and then sanding. So those are two of my tricks for getting that sort of smooth surface.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm sure it will be helpful for many people, artists who use want to use the same materials.
Yeah.
And if we turn to your how you started to make money out of that. You
Yeah.
said that first there was a market and not a family member bought your artwork,
Mm-hmm.
and how everything developed next after that.
Yeah. So it's definitely been a journey of making money with my art. Commissions were a big part of my business early on. And sometimes I would accept commissions that I wasn't, quite confident in, or now I look back, I'm like, oh, that maybe wasn't what I wanted to be doing, but it taught me something. So I definitely accepted a lot of commissions starting out. I sold my work at festivals. And then, like I said, with the pandemic, I focused on selling my work online and developing a website. And offering prints. And creating prints has been such a game changer for, I mean, it's a really important piece of most painters' business because, right, you don't have to create a unique piece of work every single time. It's a lower price point for a lot of people who are maybe getting into collecting art. And so it took a while to figure out like how to document my work, and then working with a local printer to create my prints. So prints are a big piece of my business now because it's nice to have that income when I'm between projects and selling my prints. And now I'm really lucky because I get to mostly paint originals, and because the series of hot dog stands has been so popular, people will buy the originals I create. But I do accept some commissions as well from time to time still. But yeah, it's been an evolution from selling my art in person, accepting commissions, to then transitioning to selling my originals online, which I think people got more comfortable with buying originals when the pandemic happened, buying them online, because I knew that was scary for a lot of people at first, like not seeing something in person before you make like a larger purchase like that. So, and a lot of people who buy my art are local in Chicago, since my work is very specific here, so they can like see my work. Also, I'll hang it up in coffee shops and in bars. So I do try to partner with different restaurants in the city to display my work so people can see my art in person too.
That's very. I have many questions.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. First, do you sell your prints on your website, and does it mean that you pack and deliver it? I mean, to send it personally? Do you have an assistant, or do maybe you print and sell them on the print on demand platforms?
So that's a great question. And it took so long to figure this out. So when I first started, I started with like a print on demand website. And I was using Finer Works, and they're based, I think, in Texas in the States. And they did a good job, but I think ultimately I I wanted to have more control over the printing process, and I wanted to start to offer limited edition prints. And I also needed to start. I was currently documenting my work myself, and I'm not a photographer. And I knew that, like, okay, this is not what I'm the best at. So I started to look for people in Chicago that specialized in documenting art. And so I found this photographer that would document my work for me. And then he connected me with a local printer in Chicago and then I since it's been kind of confusing because then they've been acquired by a different printing company, and which was actually a blessing in disguise, because once I started working with them, they now package and ship my prints for me. Because before, when I transitioned from the print on demand, I was starting to do all of that myself, and I found myself turning into a fulfillment center more than I was painting, and it was taking up so much of my time. So I work with Print Lab in Chicago, and they package and ship my prints for me now. And it's great because they're close by, so I'll go and I'll inspect the prints and I'll sign them. And they do print on demand for me too, so I don't print all of them at once. Like for example, if I have a edition of 50 prints, I won't I won't print 50 at once. I'll print them as the orders come in, and then so they'll print them for me. I keep track of which number in the edition we're at, and then I go and I sign them, and then they ship them out for me. And it's been like a really wonderful collaboration. So the more you can get in touch with like local printers or just talking to other artists in your area and like who they're using, that is such a wealth of information because it took me years years to figure out like the printer to use and so much trial and error with shipping.
And is the condition with this local printer who also pack and deliver your prints, is this condition better than
Yes,
with the print?
I yeah, I think the quality is so amazing that they're very good with working with me. Like I had a specific type of paper that I really liked and I wanted to use, so they started ordering like that specific paper for me. I take my prints, like I'm a little bit crazy when it comes to my prints. Like I really want them to be like as close to the original
Mhm.
painting as possible. So they were doing a lot of like test prints with me and it was
Oh,
really nice to
that's
see
lovely.
them, really nice to see it in person versus like it was wonderful to use the print on demand, but I couldn't be there in person and it would ship, they would print it and then ship it and I never got to be a part of the process. So, and that for some people that's wonderful and that works great, but I wanted to be a little bit more involved in the process with my prints. So, it's just whatever works best for you and you feel most comfortable with, but I cannot recommend enough finding if you are not comfortable documenting your own work, finding a professional to document your work for you because that it makes such a difference too with the printing process.
So the advice would be just to go outside and to talk with local printers and ask them if they have this kind of service
Yeah.
and can you collaborate on what and negotiate it maybe. Uh,
Yeah.
Another question, you mentioned that you make some collaborations with local restaurants or something
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
How do you find them? Do you
Yeah.
just
So
also go there and just, hey, I'm an artist?
yeah,
Um,
it's wonderful because now they actually reach out to me, but which is
mhm.
because they've heard of me and my work. And a lot of times, sometimes I'll paint I'll go there and I will just be like, oh, this would be a cool painting. And I will have painted, like, for example, this bar that I will be displaying my work at, I did a painting of them and then I tagged them in the painting and they were like, oh my gosh, we love it. Do you want to display your work here? So it kind of came out of me, painting them. But there are definitely a lot of places in Chicago that have open calls for artists to display their work, and they're always looking for new artists to have up on their walls. So it is kind of getting into the know of like what restaurants, what cafes are open to that and talking to other artists. I got really good at like also kind of stalking other artists in Chicago and seeing where they were displaying their work, and then reaching out to those places as well when I wanted to have my art up there. And just, yeah, connecting with other artists too and asking them questions like, hey, where are you showing your work in Chicago? Or, and then you can get like more of the details of like, oh, are they taking a commission? Or how has it been working with them? And I get a bit more of like the behind the scenes of what it's like to work with these different places. And then so you can find places that you trust as well, because it can be a little scary to have your art up in a public space and you want to make sure that, especially like a restaurant, it doesn't get damaged too. So making sure that like you're working with places that are like good about making sure the art is safe and protected.
By the way, what is the most challenging thing for you in being an artist?
Yeah, the most challenging, it's like a question. I think time management is the hardest part. I mean, you're your own boss. You have to, do social media and just wear so many different hats. And that's really exciting because it's never boring and there's literally always something to do. But it's tough sometimes to navigate the sense of overwhelm that comes with wearing so many hats.
And how do you balance these art business tasks and painting time? Do you have a schedule or
Yeah,
related?
I I do have a schedule. I like to keep it so like every week I look at like what is on the schedule for that week and then I'll plan around that. So I try not to be too rigid around, always about like, okay, I must be painting at this time because sometimes, and all artists know, like some days you're just like, I am not feeling inspired or this is not working. And so I will always have a backup plan of, certain admin tasks I could be doing, working on, a something with my website probably always needs tweaking. So I just kind of always keep the list of things that need to get done during the week of tasks, like admin tasks. And I know that like by the end of the week I need to get them done, but I always prioritize painting. And when I'm feeling inspired, I'm having a day where I feel like I want to be painting. I'm like, great, I won't do the admin stuff today. I'll save that for a moment where I'm like really not feeling it or I need a break in painting. So I prioritize painting and then I fill in the admin where I can. So,
Thank you for sharing. And how many hot dog stands have you already painted, and how many of them are still in the list?
oh
What
my.
is next?
Yeah, I painted 25 so far, and I have, so many left to go. I have a list on my notes app on my phone of I think like 60 or 70 stands. So and then more keep getting added almost every day. So I'll be painting hot dog stands for a long time. I thought this was just going to be like a year-long series, but I don't think I'll be stopping anytime soon.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm sure it would be in a brilliant exposition if, when at the end you put everything together.
Yes, I definitely want to do that. I want to have them all up in one space. And I'm also thinking about maybe doing a coffee table book. Um, or yeah, something like that would be really cool to have as a book
Yeah,
altogether.
really, that's it. I'm sure every hot dog stand would be happy to have this book and
Yeah,
the
totally.
Thank you so much for sharing all the things. My last question, what advice would you give to beginner artists who are searching for their artistic style, or maybe for someone who is thinking about changing their career to a painter, or maybe something that you would say to yourself in the beginner of your artistic journey?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a hard one because I mean, I would say so many things. I would share certain insights about, like I shared here about like the printmaking process, but bigger than that, I would say just to follow your joy. And I know that sounds cliche, but and every time I have ever chosen a subject matter or decided to work on a painting because it gives me joy and it's something that has like I keep thinking and coming back to, that painting has always felt so inspired and been really like air quotes successful in terms of how it's received because I think it comes through in the work. And the more you can follow your joy and like what just lights you up, the closer and closer you'll get to connecting with other people. And that's truly like what art is about, right? It's like it's about connecting with other people. Yes, it's a business. Yes, like it's you need to sell your work to make a living, if you want to do it full time. But if you're following like what gives you joy and what lights you up, there will always be somebody else out there who can relate to that, and has a shared human experience. So, and those will be the people who want to buy your art. So share as your work as much as possible, follow your joy, and just, yeah, just keep creating. Like when in doubt, just make more art.
This is so beautiful. Thank you for these words. And I'm sure that this following your joy is the essence, what helps any artist to go ahead and to continue in any challenge time. Thank you for
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's what makes us do what we do.
Thank you so much. It was a big pleasure for me to talk with you. And I'm sure today many people were inspired by your story. And I saw many lovely comments there. And people are waiting for your book,
Oh my
I see.
gosh, yes. Thank you so much. It was so nice talking with you. And like I said before, I've been following your creative journey for a long time and have always been so inspired by the vibrant colors and patterns that you
Thank you.
come up with. So it was such an honor when I got that DM that you wanted to have me come on and chat with you. So thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Have a wonderful
Awesome.
day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.